Welcome back to Chasing the Narrative Season 2. We're back. We went on hiatus for a little while. There was this little thing called Charity Hammer. There was some other stuff, but we're back. We're back. It's my show where I talk to people from 40K who I enjoy about whatever I would like to talk to them about, because it's not where we talk about 40K. It's where we talk about other things, and we talk about being grown-ups, and we talk about silly things, and we talk about other hobbies, and we also learn a lot about domesticated pigs. This time. With me today is my co-host of This Week in 40K, Billy Heilman, if that is his real name. We'll investigate that in just a moment.
It's not.
So, it's not. Well, that's not much of an investigation now. So, Billy and I met through the Best in Faction Discord. Originally, now it's Best in Tabletop. And Billy, for many years now, has been a beacon of positivity. The lighthouse of happiness is what I will call Billy. Encouraging and constructive in his feedback of everything we've ever made at Best in Tabletop. And I legitimately think that Billy would be in the top 5 people who have watched the most content I have ever made.
I mean, so I've listened to every podcast you've ever done, so yes.
So at some point, I had to decide, if I become friends with Billy, will I get this positivity from Billy all the time rather than only when I produce content? And it turns out yes. So now, in addition to doing This Week in 40K together, we're going to do Chasing the Narrative with Billy so we can learn a little bit about where this positivity comes from. And I'm going to start off with, why is your name not actually Billy?
So my real name is Wilson Tressler Heilman III.
I don't think you're fancy enough for that.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I came to realize relatively late in life, probably to my benefit, that being the third, I could have also been Trip or Trey. And while I did go to a private high school and did play lacrosse, I maintain I am not a big enough 80s movie villain to be Trip or Trey. But yes, Wilson Tressler.
I kind of want to watch you Trey now. I kind of want to call you Trey.
You can. I have had many nicknames over the course of my life, none of them really surrounding that part of it. I've never been a Trip or a Trey. But no, my grandfather...
And your middle name is Tressel?
Tressler.
Oh, so, Tressler, not a bridge.
No, Tressler. My great-aunt, Jo Tressler, who died, I think even before my father was born, was a paragon of wonderfulness in the family. And so when my grandfather was born, he was born during the Woodrow Wilson administration. So I'm like 2 years off being Hoover Heilman, which would be really unfortunate. And
that would suck.
Yeah. Oh, see what you did there.
Ask me about my dad jokes. I'll be here all day.
Yeah. My dad joke skills are going to need to level up soon, hopefully. But no, so it could have been Hoover Heilman, but instead Wilson, and they wanted to commemorate Jo Tressler, who everyone says was lovely, and I am the third iteration. I am technically not named after my father. I am named after my grandfather. And whenever the fourth shows up, which on my first date with my now wife was the deal breaker that I mentioned, firstborn son's name is claimed. He will be the fourth. And so, yeah, that is my real name.
All right. So why Billy, though?
Again, you'd have to ask my great-grandparents. My grandfather was Billy. And then became Bill when he became.
Oh, this is like there's an official rule in the family that people named Wilson go by Billy.
Yeah, my grandfather was Wilson Sr. He became Bill when my dad showed up, who was Billy. And then when I showed up, my dad graduated to being Bill, and I became Billy, which led to some very weird conversations between my mother and my grandmother about Billy that they realized 10 minutes in they were both talking about different people.
I would like to be slightly critical of Billy being the nickname from Wilson and not Will.
You're not the first one.
And then you could have been Willie.
Well, see, I tried to be Willie in kindergarten, and it was the best thing a school ever did for me. They said, no, you cannot be Willie. Because really, that would just be setting up for all sorts of unpleasantness.
It's not
for
a good
really
nickname.
Your whole life. Yeah.
It's true. It's not a good nickname. Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I accept that you're called Billy.
Yes.
Having met you, it's acceptable. When I first saw your name in the Discord when you became a patron, and I saw that your name was Wilson and you went by Billy, I thought, no, that doesn't. No, I don't care for that. But then I met you, and you're a Billy, and it's okay.
Yes. Well, I'm a Billy in 40K. With my wife, I am actually Wilson. She much prefers it, and so professionally, I am Wilson. But in hobbies and nerdery, I am Billy.
Okay. All right, that's great. So, Billy, what did your parents do when you were young?
So my dad was an investment banker, and
Okay.
that's what he did with his life. My mom was a social worker for many years, and then before they had me, she got passed over for a promotion, came home and said, "Hey, you want to have a kid?" And I showed up about 10 months later. So she was retired because they did the math early in life and realized that they would basically be spending her salary on childcare if she
Yep, that's what
worked.
happens.
Yep. So she was a stay-at-home mom who had way too much energy to just do that. Not that just doing that isn't more than enough, but she was a professional volunteer. She was the head of the PTA, the head of the school board, the head of the soccer association. If the community needed a job, a volunteer job done, that's what my mom did.
I see some Billy in that.
There is a lot of that there. Yes.
What do you think the big traits are that you have from each of your parents?
Um, from from my dad, I have just like and I don't know if this has come across with us, but like the earthy solidness of just, I like getting stuff done, being responsible, and making sure that everything is taken care of. And from my mom, I have a certain sense of childlike glee and amusement, and the need to, if there is a role that is not being filled, to make sure that that role is filled,
Mm-hmm. I
largely
see.
by myself.
I absolutely see that from you for sure.
Mm.
Okay, cool. So, what was Kid Billy like?
Kid Kid Billy did describe himself, and it's so much fun to talk about myself in third person. I should probably stop that right now. I
Maybe.
to my nerd friends, I was the jock, and to my jock friends, I was the nerd.
Okay.
I really,
So no one wanted you, basically, is what you're saying.
no, the thing is, I fit in really well with both groups. With like, I was the kid who was perfectly comfortable sitting at almost every table in
Hmm.
middle school and high school, and everyone was just sort of like, "Why do you like hanging out with those people?" I was like, "Because they do these really cool things, and let me tell you about them." And then everyone would look at me, and I sort of, at that age, learned to not tell everyone why all the other people's things were cool, because that was frowned upon. And
Hmm.
I've beaten that out of myself as an adult, because I've realized that being passionate about things is what draws other people to you.
Yep.
And I wish I could go back to middle school and high school me and just say, no, let your flag fly on all of those things. People will like you more for it.
Yeah, there was a thing when I started performing for voice
Mhm,
when I did vocal performance. There was a thing I realized where there's a connection when you're performing and emotion happens.
mhm,
And I don't mean like laughter. Laughter is easy to get, but like real emotion happens from the thing that you're doing. And it's because I'm passionate about what I'm doing and I'm sharing the passion with the audience.
yes.
And I think that there's incredible power in that people don't pay attention to. I think
Mhm,
sharing what you're passionate about, no matter what it is better for the world. I
mhm.
mean, provided that you're not passionate for like mass murdering or something that's not okay. I'm passionate about being a racist. That's not what I mean.
Yeah.
So okay, all right. So passionate Billy was excited about everything. This is not surprising to me.
Mhm.
When and how old did 40K happen?
So 40K happened. I was born in Chicago and lived there till I was 9. I moved to Northern California. And the first Hanukkah that I was in Northern California, it's 1992, go over to a friend's house. And I don't remember what I gave them, but they gave me a small blister pack of a 40K miniature. I think it was an Adaptus Arbites guy. I remember he had an axe.
Okay.
But this is back when miniatures were sold in packs of one or two,
Yeah.
like off
Blisters.
blisters on the wall.
Hmm.
And I thought this was the coolest thing ever. We went into my friend's older brother's room, and he had some like Gene Steeler patriarchs that he had painted up. And this lit every light in my brain afire. It was interesting rules, fun toys, cool setting. And I was basically hooked from there.
And have you played it nonstop since then?
I've taken some breaks. And to be clear, played early. Like I was an 11-year-old. I read the books and then just played against myself on my
Sure, sure.
bedroom floor. Um, it took a bit of a
We
break.
used Legos to fill in for the stuff we didn't have.
Yes, all of my various toys participated in the apocalypse battles. I was lucky enough to have a armor cast Phantom Titan that really wrecked the goblins from Warhammer Fantasy when they all showed up on the same battlefield. It was not necessarily balanced, but yeah, I've taken some breaks. I missed most of 4th edition and then most of 6th and 7th in 40k. Played a lot of fantasy too, and then it died. R.I.P. But have at least kept abreast of what's been happening for most of the past 30 years.
Okay. And at what point in 40k did you have the most fun?
Probably
Charity Hammer.
Well, yes. Charity Hammer, I would say right now is the culminating moment and the high point of what I've done thus far. I hope to build on that, but it will always be a Mount Rushmore event, the first Charity Hammer I got to go to. I very much enjoyed and was really plugged in mid to late 5th edition with the sort of Northern Virginia group of people who have spiraled off and done Nova. And then more recently, since I've gotten back in and honestly started running events in 9th edition, that's been as much as I've been plugged into the competitive scene and really enjoying that.
Okay, great. All right, so you're a high school Billy.
Yes.
And you decide that you're going to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you decide to go to college?
So when I was young and foolish, I thought I wanted to go into politics.
Okay.
And so
you are named for a politician.
I am. The West Wing was very popular at the time and truly loved it.
That's my favorite TV show of all time, by the way. I don't think we've ever talked about that.
No, I can go pretty dang deep on West Wing. I actually had standing Wednesday phone calls with my parents for a very long time that came out of needing to discuss the latest episode of West Wing when I went to college. But the combination of that and Georgetown having non-binding early admissions meant that it was a no-brainer to apply there. And then I got in. And so I am a Hoya Saxa, go Georgetown.
Okay. I don't know what any of that means, but I bet it's related to Georgetown.
It's our motto / the start of our fight song.
Okay. What degree did you get?
I can never remember whether it was a BA or BS, but I majored in government with an accidental minor in history.
Oh, all right. Okay. And so you at some point during college, did you decide you didn't want to be involved in politics? Or was it after that?
No, I went for my first interview on the Hill, and it was the most mutually disamicable interview of my life. I did not like the person interviewing.
I don't like you. You don't like me. Maybe I shouldn't work here.
It got aggressive. The guy said that he felt uncomfortable talking to me because he thought I was going to take information to the other side. Okay. Like, no joke. That was just a sentence that
I also have found you to be suspiciously traitorous. I also have found that to be the case.
Yeah, it was a weird experience because like my life was I want to work on the Hill. I want to be a congressional staffer. And this guy was just like, nah, not for you. Okay, I'm 20. What the fuck am I supposed to do with my life?
Uh-huh. So what happened then?
So I ended up interning for what was at the time a defense consulting firm, and it turned into a homeland security consulting firm. I basically helped create the Department of Homeland Security's repositories of lessons learned and best practices, and then went on to do a whole bunch of very random work with shockingly high up in government people for someone still in and then right out of college.
Mm-hmm. And is this when you wrote a report that the president saw?
I did. When Hurricane Katrina happened, my company was responsible for developing the lessons learned and then fixing everything that went wrong with Hurricane Katrina. And it fell to me to write the report to track our progress. And in that particular administration, as information went upstream, information density went down. So it was basically a big green circle saying, yes, Mr. President, we are on track to solve all of the problems.
Okay.
In our defense...
This is G-Dub?
Yes, okay. Bush. Uh, in our defense, there were a lot of things that went wrong in Hurricane Katrina, mostly due to lack of pre-planning, and my company actually cared about doing a good job, so we figured out how to better plan, and FEMA has done a much better job in emergency response as a result of a lot of those issues.
Well, that's
My
great.
boss at the time is actually like number 3 at FEMA now as a
Okay.
result.
But that's not where you ended up.
That is not.
So
I
what's the quick hits of from
Yeah.
there to here for your career?
Always knew that that was not a career. Wanted to move back to the Bay Area, but I only had federal government experience. There's not a lot of federal government jobs in San Francisco, so law school made a lot of sense because the LSAT wasn't scary for me. Came back to law school in the Bay Area, ended up teaching at that school, both UC Hastings and UC Berkeley, for about 10 years, teaching negotiation and mediation. That was very emotionally satisfying, but not great for the bank account. So I have, over the last year, been working for the world's largest wind turbine company, selling wind turbine service.
Making the world better.
If I do my job well, the world is a better place, and that's actually a nice thing to be able to say these days.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Okay, that's neat. So, do you like being a lawyer?
I do. Technically, I am not a lawyer. I actually work on the sales side, not the legal side. There are real lawyers who do the real lawyer stuff. That guy in Office Space who takes things from one department and hands it to another department?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of my job. I sit in between legal, sales, finance, ops, and shepherd the entire deal from commercial alignment to execution.
And do you like this?
I actually really do enjoy it. It lets me, because like there's a joke in law school that most people go to law school because there's no math on the LSAT. I can actually add two numbers together and not have my brain explode.
Mm-hmm.
And, I like knowing how things work. So like, because I studied physics in high school, I understand how a wind turbine operates. And so my ability to just know enough of these things and to earlier in our conversation be curious about them lets me be this really good in between who can translate. All right, the legal document says this. Commercially, we need to arrive here. Operationally, we need to do these things. All right, let me put it all on my plate and figure out how to do it.
Right. Okay. Neat. So you think you'll keep doing that then?
Something along these lines, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one thing that we've talked a lot about mental health on the show, but we haven't talked a lot about being single. And so you and I share a thing, which is neither of us were particularly good at finding our wives. We found them, but I would say that neither of us showed competency in finding them. It took us both a while.
Yeah.
So I thought that maybe there's probably a lot of single people that are going to listen to this, and maybe we should talk a little bit about being nerds trying to find partners. So when did you meet your wife?
I met my wife, I actually know because it was our first anniversary, August 15th of 2019.
Okay. So right before COVID.
Right before COVID.
Okay. So you were already late 30s when you met your wife.
I would like to clarify that mid 30s, if only because since I met her, she's been telling me that I'm about to turn 40. I still have yet to turn 40.
Okay. I was 36, I think, when I met my wife.
Yeah.
So, so both of us had been not with our wives for 15-ish years between college and meeting our wives.
Mm-hmm.
So how was dating for Billy?
Dating for Billy was a very challenging process to get there. Mm-hmm. I struggled talking to women for the longest time. Like I have these vivid college memories of an incredibly attractive girl, woman, whatever you call a 20-year-old, who was sitting next to me, who was interested in me. I was interested in her. And I'm just sitting there paralyzed with, what the heck do I do with this? Like that was my life.
Why?
I have no idea. That's not entirely fair. I don't like doing something that I'm not at least competent in. And until I know I can do something with a minimum degree of competence, I just have this paralyzing fear to do any of it. So just getting over that threshold to do something the first time is really hard for me.
Do you think that's about self-esteem? Like, do you think you don't want to look incompetent? Is it not wanting to let others down? Like, where do you think that comes from? Because you're such a positive person. I think it's an interesting dichotomy between how your personality is.
It's one of the central tensions in my life, and it's an internal thing. Like my internal narrative about myself is that I'm generally good at stuff. Like I'm a talented individual, and I don't like doing something that forces me to downgrade that internal assessment. So like it's, I don't play volleyball because if
it doesn't feel good to fail, is what you're saying.
It really messes with me. So rather than doing something and failing, I'll just not do it.
Okay.
That's not a healthy way to approach life, but I at least have the self-awareness to know that is how I approach life.
So when you found women really uncomfortable to talk to, which I would imagine a bunch of people that are listening probably understand.
Yes.
Not neurotic Colin who could talk to anybody, but other people probably understand. My issue was not being uncomfortable talking to women. That was not the issue that I had. I had other issues. But for you, does that mean you avoided doing it?
Yeah. I basically was in my first relationship actually after college. Okay. And it was a coworker, and it basically was her forcing us to be in a relationship. Yeah. And it wasn't that I wasn't interested. I was incredibly interested in her, and we hung out a lot, but she basically forced the relationship to happen, and I was very happy for that to take place.
So what would you tell if you could talk to college-aged Billy? What would you tell him?
I would tell him that women are actually interested in you. It's not scary. Don't go in with the expectation that you're owed anything, but if they're responding to you, that is actually a good sign, and just have the conversation and go from there.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I think that a lot of people probably could hear that.
Yeah.
So did you have any significant success with the relationships before meeting your wife? Did you have long relationships with other women?
Yes. And for me, so the thing that my biggest issue was the first step. Once I got into something with someone, I actually think I'm pretty good at being in a relationship, but it was just that first step. So for me, it was actually just doing online dating. And the thing that I liked about that is by the time you actually met for a date, you were convinced that in that first 15 seconds, both of you were excited to be there.
That's right.
And so that just took away all of that awkwardly walking up to someone at the bar and be like, hey, how are you doing? You'd gotten all of that done by the time that you met. So it was just easy to meet and then see if you have something in common.
Yeah, that's the first date anxiety for me is, do they think I'm ugly? Do they think I'm uninteresting? Do they think I'm boring? Do they think I'm rude? Right. Once I have confirmation from them that they are at all into me, I'm completely comfortable with dating and excited to get to know them. But like for me, it's all about, I feel like I'm being judged and I don't know how I'm doing. That I don't like information that is important to me that I don't know about. Like I want to gather all the data. Like I want to know all of the information on every situation. So like when my wife is frustrated and she says, and I don't know, this may not be relevant to the way Billy sees things, but for me, when my wife is upset, if she says it's nothing, sometimes I'll say, you can just tell me what it is, and still we don't have to talk about it. Like we can just accept that this is a thing that's wrong, that needs to get better without us having to solve it. But I can't not know about it. That's not the way that this is going to work. I have to have all of the information.
The closest I can come to that is saying, honey, is this a thing that you want to be comforted over or a thing you want to solve?
Oh, yeah.
And if
young people, listen to this, man. That is what women want. Yeah. They want you to tell them, do you want me to help you or do you want me to listen to you? That's like one of the main reasons you'll fight with a woman, in my experience.
And as someone who needs to solve most of the things, spoiler, you can take it from, do you want to be comforted? Do the comforting, and then you can transition into solving. But I've gone to my wife many times and said, honey, I can tell you're upset about something. Let's resolve this, because it's just much better when you're not, or at least if you're angsty, you know what you're angsty about and you're working towards fixing it.
Right. I think that men are raised to solve problems in general by society, and I obsessively want to solve problems that are around me if I can. And so for me, it's a lot of, oh, we have a third category that you didn't mention, which is this is a problem we're going to solve later. This is a future us problem. It is, we both acknowledge that this is a problem, and we both acknowledge it's not getting solved right now. That is also a category of problem when you're a grown up.
Yeah, our way of dealing with that is, okay, what are those steps going to look like? Like, we don't need to resolve it right now, but we need to identify what the plan is going to be.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so how did you get over your issues with women enough to meet your wife? Was it online dating that did it for you?
It was online dating, but it's what put me into online dating. Was I randomly fell into what felt like the start of a good relationship, and then it blew up in my face. And not badly, but just, oh, we're not going to pursue a relationship. Okay, that's not what I wanted. And I was maybe 26, 27 at the time. I like women. I don't want to be single. Fine, I'll get over myself and join an online dating site. And it was just I had reached a breaking point and I wanted it to be better. And so I was able to get past that anxiety and just take that first step.
Yeah, that's great. So you met your wife through online dating?
We did. It's actually kind of a funny story. We matched, talked for a while, and then I had to travel. She had to travel. We fell off each other's radar. 18 months later, we rematch. And this was on Bumble, which is the one where the woman has to send the first message. So she sends a message to me, "You look familiar. Have we matched before?" I had the same phone. I had the text messages from our first time. I'm like, "Yeah, we did. You want to actually grab that drink we talked about?" And we did, and the rest is history.
And she has a pig.
She does have a pig. Now, we have a pig now. But yes, she came with a porcine child, which confused the hell out of me initially. But we have grown to love each other.
Did you have hesitancy about living with a pig?
Well, I mean, no, because by the time I was living with her, I had gotten over all of the teething issues that come with bonding with a pig. And they are many and challenging. But by the time I was actually functionally and then actually living with my wife, Lilou, who is the pig, we were on good terms.
This is the part of the show where my dogs howl.
Well, they know that we're talking about pets and animals, and the thing is, Lilou has a tendency to confuse dogs, so she's just doing it through the interwebs right now. So I'll just keep going about the challenge of living with pigs while dogs bark at Collins. The thing you need to know if you're going to live with a pig is pigs are very hierarchical animals. They need to know who's in charge. And their default assumption, the first time they come in contact with anyone else, is that the pig is the one in charge. And taking a step even further back, a lot of people know of these things like mini pigs or teacup pigs. That is mostly a myth, or at the very least, a misrepresentation. Pigs become sexually fertile at 6 months old, but they don't become full grown until 5 years old. So anytime someone is showing you a teacup pig, that's just a baby pig. And if they're saying, "Look at the babies this pig has had," that's because pigs become fertile so early, well before they're full grown. So a full Lilou is about, 1.5 feet tall, 40 inches long, but she's like 130 pounds. And especially living in a San Francisco apartment, that can take up a lot of space. And so figuring out who's in charge is necessary for physical as well as emotional safety.
If you guys are interested to hear more about this, part 2 of the episode that'll be up for our YouTube members is going to be all about pig rearing. Mm-hmm. What is it like to live with this pig? I want to hear about the fact that you have to chase the pig sometimes. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the fact that most pig sayings, "happy as a pig in a blanket," all that stuff is true. There's one that's not true. We came up with when you were here at Charity Hammer, and I can't remember what it was now.
I remember that.
But there's one where we're like, "Oh, that one's not quite right." So we're going to, in part 2, talk about pigs in more detail. But to finish up part 1, mm-hmm. So you meet your wife.
Yep.
You're living with your wife through COVID. Yes. What was it like having the beginning of your relationship be a pandemic?
So we had enough months ahead of the pandemic to realize that we were right for each other.
But it was like 3 months.
6 months. It was closer to 6 months.
All right.
And so my wife is a travel bug. So very early in the relationship, we met in August. By October, we took a week-long trip to Cuba, which is a challenge because of international banking rules. And between that and then she met my parents over Christmas, and just meeting the whole family went over like gangbusters, which I was confident on because I knew everyone knew they would like each other. So we were pretty well committed to each other. We both live in San Francisco, and at the time, both of us were living in studio apartments. And then in COVID, we basically ended up living mostly in my wife's studio apartment.
Oh,
with the two of us and a pig. And that was a challenge, but it actually ended up not being like we just got along so well. It was easy for us to be around each other, and both of us are enough introverts that we recharge our batteries with some alone time, and neither one of us drained each other's battery. And that, as much as anything, was what made it be clear that, oh, right, I found my person, she's found her person. This is great.
I don't understand alone time in a studio apartment.
Well, that's the thing. You couldn't have it. And it was lucky that I had my studio that I could go back to during the day when I was working. But I basically, functionally, without talking about it, moved in with my wife at the start of COVID and have lived with her ever since.
Okay. But not in the studio apartment anymore.
No, we have since upgraded to a nice 2-bedroom apartment in San Francisco, which would sell for just a ludicrous amount of money. The next step, as we're trying to grow our family, we're not exactly sure where we're going to land, but no, we have 3 whole rooms with doors in between them, which is a luxury for this city.
Do you want to say anything about your adventure to be a dad? Do you want to say anything about that?
We're currently going through the process right now. We're trying out IVF, and thus far it's working very well. Still in the preliminary stages. My sincere hope is that I'm unable to attend Charity Hammer next year because I'll have a 2-month-old baby.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Do you have you always wanted kids?
Oh yes, absolutely. Like back to what we started with, my real name being Wilson Tressler Heilman III.
And I've always this is what the 4th kid is named. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Like on our first date, my wife asked me for deal breakers, and I said the only deal breaker I have is the firstborn son's name is spoken for. So yeah, I always wanted to have kids. We're hoping for 2, but the main goal is healthy and happy. So,
all right. Let's see the things we didn't talk about. You're a certified mediator.
Yep. So went to law school and ended up just being good at negotiation and mediation. Actually, I always ask. So mediation is, instead of going to court, you go to not court, where the mediator, instead of the judge, sits between the two parties and helps facilitate a conversation to reach a resolution. The primary difference is a judge can make a decision for the parties, a mediator cannot.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I have mediated quite a few divorces because it's just the easiest thing to get into.
Why would you want to do that?
It pays really well, and it's actually quite interesting.
Okay.
If my career path had taken a different route, I would love to be a business mediator, because you basically get to help, like for large companies, you could help solve the problems. And the thing that I love about mediation is that, unlike going to court, where one side absolutely wins and the other side absolutely loses, in mediation, you can craft a solution that actually solves the underlying problem for both parties, which is generally faster and leads to solutions that both sides are more willing to abide by. So it's a better way to solve a long-term problem.
Yeah. That's part of why I do software sales, is that I like the people that make the software are not equipped to go talk to the people that need the software.
Mm-hmm.
That's not there's a disconnect there. And I like that I can get in the middle there. And I don't see it as I'm going to convince these people to buy my thing. Yeah. It's I'm going to help these people understand how their life is going to be better with this thing, and then they'll buy it on their own.
Right.
And I sold business intelligence software for 18 years, 17 years, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I sold it to a bunch of companies that are run better now because they have better information than they did before. And, people that got hired to work on that system are hired because I sold them the thing. Like I like that I brought together this technology with these people and made the world a little bit of a better place each time. I hope.
Yeah.
Knock
No,
on wood, right?
I one of the big changes in my perspective on things is that collaboration is really the best way to interact with other people as opposed to competition. Like competition can be a subset of it, but if you work together, you can just reach so much better resolutions.
Yeah, and one of the things that we talk about with our kids a lot is one of the most important things you learn in school as a kid is how to get along with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are a lot of people that as grown-ups don't know how to work as a team. They don't know how to work with others, and those people are not going to be as successful.
Yeah.
You have to be able to work with other people to succeed in this world. Like there's very few, there are careers, you could be an artist that's naturally talented, right? And hardworking, but there's not very many jobs that you can work where you don't need to work with other people to accomplish things. It's important.
And that's why I loved teaching negotiation for as long as I did, because it's just the setting up of a productive conversation.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, you can do almost anything with it.
It wasn't a lot of the Trump stuff. Like you weren't telling people to get like shorter chairs across the table and stuff.
No, and I could talk. This episode could go for a very long period of time about why that's like horrible negotiating and completely reliant on the other person behaving in a way you have no control over, as opposed to you actively setting things up to. It's like in 40K. Allow me to express my skill on the tabletop. Don't make me just have to roll 4-ups.
When people talk about negotiation, a lot of people think that that it's about trying to take advantage of the other side. And I had a boss for a long time, like kind of like my work dad. And Mickey was this wonderful guy, but like charming to a degree that's unreasonable. One of those people.
Yeah.
And Mickey has this great story where he went to buy a used car, and he ended up getting the sales rep to split his commission with Mickey to get it cheap enough.
Okay.
And he goes home and he tells his wife this story, and he's all proud of himself. And his wife says, "You go back and you give him his commission back. And you do it right now. He has to feed his family. He's doing his job. Why did you take advantage of him?" And the lesson there is that a good negotiation is one where both sides end up good. If your negotiation ends up with one side being taken advantage of, even if that side doesn't perceive it, it wasn't a good negotiation. Yeah. Does that resonate with you?
100%. I mean, there are very few times that you're negotiating with someone where that'll be the only interaction you ever have. And if there's ever going to be a follow-on, you're actually negotiating poorly if you screw over the other side, because you're just going to get so much worse of a deal the next time. Consider it as an ongoing relationship to be built.
Also, if you screw them over, does their success not matter to you? Like, not only as a person, as a human, but also does your partnership really not matter how they're doing? Right? Yeah. Like you want, like, I think a lot of this comes up in a lot of my friends when they get divorced, right? Like there's this temptation to take advantage and wreck the person that hurt you, right? In a divorce proceeding. But one of the things I try to point out is if you're co-parenting, you kind of want the other parent to be comfortable, right? You don't want one poor poverty-stricken parent and one wealthy parent. That's not actually good for the kids.
Well, and I can put it another way, because so people go into law school largely because they've been really good and smart throughout their whole life, and they've been able to just outsmart so many other people. And so people come into my negotiation class and they just think, all right, my job is to just run circles around them and trick them. And the problem with that is, if you don't collaborate with the other side, the solution you come up with is only ever as good as the best that you can do. You're missing out on the possibility, remote though it may be, that the person you're interacting with might be as smart as you, might have a good idea. And sometimes
they don't have to be as smart as you to have a better idea than you. Also,
no, exactly. But
like that doesn't matter,
right? But if you're just competing against them, their good idea can never come up and never be useful.
Yeah.
So instead, if you work with them, you have this possibility of an even better solution than what you, genius though you are, could come up with on your own.
There's a parenting moment that you haven't had yet, Billy, that teaches you that humility, which is the first time you're trying to solve a problem that is advanced, and a kid in their tiny voice tells you the solution.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like the first time that happens and you think, I know so much more than this child. but they have solved this problem faster than me. The first time that happens is a big deal.
I look forward to it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it for part 1. I thank you, Billy. So if you guys are members, you can join us and see part 2, where we're going to talk all about domesticated pig rearing, animal husbandry, as it were. The civilization nerd in me wants to call it animal husbandry every time.
Oh, I love that game.
I've played all of them. In fact, that's what I'm currently playing in my off time, is Civilization 6.
I mostly stopped around Civ 3. Once it went to hexes, it just fell off for me. But yeah.
That's a really weird take. But all right, I'm with you.
Yeah, my take there, I accept that I'm wrong, but subjectively, it's where I stand.
All right. If you guys enjoyed Billy, check him out on This Week in 40K every Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. on this network. Also, you can find Billy in our Patreon group. We are currently working to combine our pricing structure so that you can sign up for the YouTube and the Patreon through YouTube at the same time. But right now, if you go to Best in Faction at Patreon, patreon.com/best in tabletop, not Best in Faction, Best in Tabletop. You can sign up and join our Patreon group. Hundreds of people talking about all types of different nerdy topics. If you don't want to talk about 40K, there's lots of that there as well. Billy is, I'm sure, a much less productive human because that Discord exists.
I mean, I spent some time there.
Yeah.
Spend some time there.
And if you are a YouTube member, you can join. You can see our part 2. The part 2 is of Chasing the Narrative is also joined by additional bit reps and also some member community only events that we're starting that are all behind that YouTube members only area. Also, for This Week in 40K, you will get the second half and the longer and more detailed part of Hank's meta list analysis each week will be in that members area as well. So for now, we're going to step away, and we'll see those of you that want to join us in part 2 to talk about some pig stuff. Bye, everybody.
Bye.